Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, intimacy coordinator for the hit 1989 romance epic Roadhouse, my brother Mike.
And that stuff was hot. All right, come on
there
now.
was a lot of it.
Come on now. We delivered on Roadhouse, baby. We delivered.
Yeah,
of course,
you
when you're
did.
starting with a Patrick Swayze and a Sam Elliott,
Dynamite script like that one. I mean, just incomparable writing in that script.
And I love that in this tiny, tiny, tiny town in Southwest Missouri or whatever, they have a doctor who is a supermodel. That is fantastic.
Also a supermodel.
I see that all the time.
Trees.
You see that all the time.
All happens all the time. Anyway, Roadhouse will come up again in this episode, I promise. On this week's episode, though, we'll look back at a final week of Cactus League play. We'll do our annual preseason predictions, which everyone seems to love. Alex Duvall is going to join us for those. I know you do. We'll talk more about that a little bit. Yeah, and then we'll preview the opening series against the Cleveland Guardians. It's time for real baseball, everyone. If you want to get a little bit more content from us, if you want to hear more about everything, make sure you're subscribed to the Royals Weekly Substack. It's only $5 a month. You're going to get 2 extra episodes a week starting soon. Mike and I need to talk about his episode that he's going to start putting out every Friday, and you get at least one piece of written content. I put that out earlier today about the Mark Canha trade, which we'll also talk a little bit about today, but some detail and some depth on that Mark Canha trade and some stuff on the roster in this week's written weekly wrap-up, we call it on Sundays. So make sure you subscribe to the Royals Weekly Substack, royalsweekly.substack.com. Tons of extra content, just $5 a month. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. I also got to remind you, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. It has been kind of madness. There's been some good stuff going on in the tournament. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and of course, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Let's start the review with roster news. A lot's been going down roster-wise as teams try and shape up their final rosters heading into opening day. We'll start with the big one. The Royals traded cash and a player to be named later for 36-year-old outfielder Mark Canha. They made that trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. Mike, what are your thoughts with the Royals trading away a little bit of cash and a player to be named later for a pretty old outfielder who looked like he wasn't going to make the Milwaukee Brewers roster anyway?
I think it's an interesting choice, interesting way to go. It brings more of that on-base ability, kind of, and I think it's somewhat targeted here at this point, we have to say, in that, you get India, who has a lot better on-base ability. Now Canha has a lot of better on-base ability. You're shying away from some of those guys, or seemingly shying away from some of those guys who don't. And so it makes me wonder, okay, did they notice even when the offense was good last year, it wasn't all that consistent? Is that something that they saw and feel like they at a value can improve in this team? And, he's not a black hole in the lineup, but he doesn't give you much more than that on-base ability. But hey, that's more than what some of the other guys are going to give you in the corner.
Yeah, that's true. And stability is the key word there. That's what they're looking for with adding a guy like Canha. You can list a fairly long list of deficiencies Canha has at this point. He doesn't have a ton of raw power at this point. He doesn't run. I mean, he runs pretty well for a 36-year-old guy. I think he's in the 60-something percentile, but he's not a great fielder in the outfield. Maybe average in left field. Decent at first base, not good anywhere else. And so, what you're really looking for is offensive stability. You're leaning into that ability to draw a walk, to get on base, to produce a little bit offensively, consistently above average offense from Mark Canha. And that's what they're looking for here. Although I do wonder, it does seem to make Hunter Renfroe a little bit redundant. Like, what Mark Canha's right-handed, Hunter Renfroe's right-handed, what is Hunter Renfroe giving you that Canha really can't? Maybe a touch of power, but certainly not any more offensive production than Canha is going to give you. And so you have to wonder, why are you keeping Melendez? It looks like they're on track to keep Melendez, Renfroe, and Canha. That's an interesting mix to have on your bench quite a bit when none of those guys have defensive versatility. None of them are worthy as a pinch runner or anything like that. So they're going to have a bench maybe to start the year that doesn't really look like it has the type of diversity that it has in the past, unless they decide to do something with Renfroe or maybe Melendez or something like that. But for now, it looks like those three might ride into the season sort of occupying a lot of bench time. Also, in sadder roster news, it's not really roster news because he hasn't been put on the IL or anything, but it is injury news. Vinny Pasquantino left a game a few days ago with or the last game of Cactus League play with a strained hamstring. Got some people worried. We're not sure yet if what it means for him. We're hoping it'll be minor. But Mike, what are your thoughts on seeing Pasquantino maybe hobble off there for a little bit?
Well, the hopes are that it's minor. They said that there'd be some more evaluation today. I haven't heard word yet on what the outcomes of that were. It sounded like Vinny was pretty optimistic that there wouldn't be a lot of time missed, if any. Now, I would say hamstring injury like 4 or 5 days before you start playing, you're probably not going to start the season or you're not going to be in the opening day lineup, I wouldn't think. But hopefully it's no more than just, okay, a series or two. He needs a week, maybe 2 weeks off, and then he's back in there, because this team cannot afford to lose anybody in the top 4 spots of their lineup, really.
Yeah, they really can't afford that Vinny Pasquantino. Although I'll say they can't afford it more now, I think, with the Cano signing, because Cano, believe it or not, is actually a decent first baseman. And so if he has to play first base for 4 or 5 games, that's not a huge deal in the grand scope of things, as long as some guys get hot offensively or whatever. But he is right-handed, Vinny's left-handed, and that sort of thing. So it's not ideal, but it is something that they could, I think, overcome a little bit more now. Vinny means so much to their offense. We saw what it looked like when he went out last year with about a month left to go in the season. Their offense just went. See, I did the sound effects because this is an audio medium, right? So you got to be able to hear it.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make about Cana. I think that's, I guess, somewhat fortunate in that you're going out to get this guy. Vinny goes down with the hamstring. Maybe that's why they haven't made a move on a Hunter Renfroe or anything yet. You may need somebody like that, Hunter MJ, to fill in for, or you're going to let him fill in for a little while at the beginning, those first couple series, until you really know that Vinny can be back, and then maybe something happens for one of those players.
Yeah, we'll see on that one, but hopefully Vinny's just shrugs it off and comes back in and is fine. I hope that's the case. In other roster news, Carlos Hernandez was placed on waivers and then picked up off waivers by the Philadelphia Phillies. I think it was the Philadelphia Phillies. And so he is no longer a Kansas City Royal. He was going to be the odd man left out. If you didn't see, Ann Rodgers the other day posted the 13 pitchers who are going to make the opening day roster for the Royals. Hernandez was not on the list. Chris Stratton was. Other than that, it was pretty much everybody you'd expect. And so Hernandez was placed on waivers. Nick Prado and Nelson Velasquez were also placed on waivers, though they passed through waivers and will report to AAA Omaha. I don't think there's a ton we need to talk about with this one. We've been talking about the fact that Hernandez may not make the opening day roster for a while now. And we're pretty sure that Prado and Velasquez weren't going to. And so this shouldn't be really news or shocking to anyone. On the field last week, the Royals went 4-2, which brought their overall Cactus League record to 19-11, which was good enough for second place in the Cactus League. They don't get to hang the banner.
That's a pretty good record for second place. Who won that
The Giants ended up winning the Cactus League. I don't know. I think they do award like a trophy or something. I don't know. But I don't know where they're going to hang it. Maybe they'll just give it to the janitor or something. I'm not sure. Of course, none of these things matter. Nobody cares who wins the Cactus League or what the record is. But Mike, how do you feel about how the Royals wrapped up the spring in this last week?
Well, don't love the injury to Vinny, obviously. And the only thing that I really was hoping to see was something a little bit more from MJ. The swing is different. The weak spot is the same. He still struggles. Every at-bat that I saw of MJ Melendez did not show me that he has changed a whole lot as a hitter. So that was a little bit disappointing. But overall, the pitching staff is healthy, which I'm really excited about, and including the bullpen. And yeah, I'm excited. Yes, I don't think the Vinny injury is going to be huge. I think it's going to be shorter, so I'm pretty excited about it. Really wish I would have seen more from MJ, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the book's still out on a couple guys with question marks. Guys we wanted to get some more solid answers from in spring training. I'm going to talk specifically about MJ and Michael Garcia. A lot of the talk coming into spring training was if these two guys perform better, they have a better chance offensively. And we just haven't seen that their offense is going to be any different than in the past. You talked about MJ, and we watched him face Jack Leiter the other day and just get blown by with fastballs.
Could there be a pitcher that he shouldn't be playing against more than Jack Leiter.
Yeah, he should.
Unless Leiter was left-handed, I guess maybe that would be
maybe. Yeah,
Leiter lives on a high fastball that goes 100+ miles an hour, and he'll never.
He didn't touch it. He did draw a walk against Leiter. I'll give him that, which was good to see. But at the same time, he could not touch any of the fastballs in the upper third against Leiter, and it was really, really tough for him. But Maikel Garcia as well. You know what his ground ball percentage in spring training is, Mike?
I do not.
60%. He has hit 60% ground balls this spring, which you do not want from Maikel Garcia. And so, yeah, it's just been tough. And so the book is still out on those guys. I think you have to give them a little bit more of a chance, but especially Maikel because he's so young, plays such good defense and stuff like that. But man, you really wanted to see those two guys come out and show that maybe their offense looked significantly different this spring. Mike, there were plenty of strong performers in a winning week for the Royals last week. Who did you pick out of a pile of guys who had decent weeks?
I went with the classic here, Bobby Witt Jr.
Got a couple classics here, actually.
BWJ, 8 for 12 with 3 runs, a double, 2 home runs. Finally got some power going there. 2 RBI, no walks, and 1 strikeout. He did get caught stealing one time, but Bobby Witt Jr. Had a very getting a little warm here going into the actual games. Something good to see from him.
Yeah, I chose a classic as well, and he's another guy who's getting a little warm. He had a terrible spring, it seemed like, basically up until this last week. And then this last week, he turned it on, and he was on fire. And that's Salvador Perez. Turning it on right when a veteran needs to know how to turn it on, right? He went 6 for 12 this last week with 1 double, 1 home run, 0 walks, and 1 strikeout. Looking like classic Salvador Perez. I watched the broadcast. I want to say it was that Rangers game, and they were talking about Perez like all the broadcast teams like to do because they really don't know any of the other Royals players. And they were like, just talking. They both were like, oh, he's surefire Hall of Famer whenever he gets done, which I found interesting. But what I find particularly compelling that they didn't bring up is the notion that like how impressive it is that last year was one of the best seasons of his career, and all the characteristics you would normally point to for an older player as like, it looks like he's going to have a downturn. He hasn't had yet. He's still hitting the ball really hard. He's still doing all the same stuff he ever did. His plate discipline, if anything, is getting better over the course of his career. Like, you're not looking at him as like, oh, his body's breaking down. He caught a bunch of games last year. He played a bunch of games last year.
People were like, oh, well, he didn't catch as many games last year. He caught as many games as a normal MLB catcher usually does. He just usually catches a lot more than that.
Right. He just didn't break the records for innings in a season like he had previously. Like, he's just playing a normal, but he's playing a ton of games. I think he played like 150, some 5, 7, 8 games total, playing at first base, DH, and catcher. So it's really impressive what he's doing, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down right now. He could be one of those anomaly athletes who's just insanely gifted athletically, and as a result can play deep into his career. Anyway, I chose Salvador Perez. Mike, who was not really impressing you this last week?
Well, it was tough to see Chris Bubich take such a shellacking in his outing this week. 3.2 or 3 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 6 earned runs. He gave up a home run, 2 walks, did get 4 strikeouts in there. Not worried about it or anything like that. Ready to see how he does in that 5th starter spot. Actually, I guess he'll be in the 4th starter spot, I think. But yeah, no big deal. I think he showed enough this spring to get the job. I'll be interested to see how deep they let him go into games because I don't imagine it'll be that deep. But really excited to see him go in that second series.
Yeah, and it will be. I wonder about that because he's going to get how many days off? I mean, I bet he pitches in that second Texas Rangers exhibition game because I think Waka's going Tuesday. In the first one. Yeah, Waka's going Monday Tuesday.
Waka's going Monday. Bubich is going Tuesday.
Bubich is going Tuesday. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Because he's going to get a good 6-7 days off probably, I would imagine, before those he pitches in the second series against Milwaukee?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, all right. My week performer for this week is one Kyle Isbell. He has just not had a good spring altogether. He has struggled mightily at the plate this spring. And it's something, we obviously give him a pass because his defense is so good that he doesn't have to be a huge offensive contributor and it's at a premium position. But we would like it if he contributed a little bit more with the bat. He went 2 for 9 last week with 0 extra base hits, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. And Isbell's a guy who always perplexes me because for some reason he lives and dies by the batted ball, and it would be so much better if he could develop the capacity to walk at say 10%. He would like totally change his offensive profile and give himself a chance to be much more of an offensive contributor down at the bottom of the lineup. It's something that if he could do would one secure his future in Major League Baseball. He's going to run into a problem as he gets older where like if his legs start to slow down just a bit, his defense wanes just a little bit, and all of a sudden he's no longer worth it as an investment for a team. So he really needs to think about long-term for my career. What's best is figuring out how I can be as productive as possible offensively. So far, he has not done it. Last week, he did not do that. And I'm hoping that he's just waiting for that regular season to turn it on because they kind of can't have a nothing from him out there offensively. We want to see at least 85 weighted runs created plus or something like that from him, I think. Mike, I know you're scrambling right now because you forgot to put a theme in for this week. Do you want me to go first so that you can finish getting yours in there?
See, you of little faith and no knowledge. I'm not scrambling because I have one in my head, okay?
Oh, you have one in your head?
Of course I do, yes. Of course I do.
Okay, here we go. What is your
I
theme
just didn't
for
put
this
it down
week?
there because I didn't want you stealing it, okay?
Oh, good call. Good call. I would steal it.
It's from a classic, I think it's 90s. I want it late 90s or early 2000s. Bar song, Semisonic, Closing Time. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. We're starting up a new season, baby. Spring training is over. That was the new beginning. It's now ending. It's done, folks.
Here's a fun fact. He completely pulled that out of his ass.
I did not.
Because that is the one everybody goes to when anything's ending. Oh, whatever. Semisonic, please.
Semisonic
He's actually
classic.
got that tattooed on his butt. So, you
know. So, thank you for destroying my theme, Mark. All right. Yeah. But that's what we're talking about here. Let's go. Let's get this thing started. All right. I'm excited for this regular season to get going. Second place in the Cactus League. Woo!
Woo! Oh yes, that's great. Yes, I'm also going with a '90s song. I want to say Semisonic was the '90s.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I'm also going with a '90s song, and it's one that's all about competition, and it's one that's all about striving for greatness. And that song is "Going the Distance" by Cake. And I'm taking the line that starts the song. Reluctantly crouched at the starting line, engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flags go up, churning and burning, they yearn for the cup. That's the line I'm going with. Classic from Cake. What a tune. I bet they play it in the locker room before every game.
I'm
I
sure.
would if I were
sure
there. I would.
All these people born in 2001 are
I bet they would.
Cake in the locker room.
I bet they do. Royals Weekly is brought to you by All in Physical Therapy, who are happy to announce that they will soon offer strength and conditioning programs for youth athletes. Starting in June, they'll offer strength and conditioning for athletes who want to gain an edge on the football field, basketball court, or wherever they play.
Good. I got to strengthen these glutes up for a big twerking competition I'm entering next week.
You're not leaving there with second place. Of course, All In still offers the best in recovery from total joint surgeries and sports injuries, all the stuff we've talked about. They're great at the surgeries. They're great at helping people get back to healthy. Hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, you name it. They're helping you recover from if you're hurting it.
They even helped me recover from a bruised ego after I hurt my back sneezing. Helped the back too when it needed it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. If you're interested in reaching the peak of your athletic performance or getting back to 100% from an injury, check out All In Physical Therapy at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com. Or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300.
Hey,
there's a guy. There's a good-looking guy.
What's up?
How's it going, my man?
How we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. You came in with perfect timing, as always. And so we're going to dig right in here. Always. This is why you were a great pitcher, and that's why you're a great coach. Here we go. Every year, we do something a little special on the episode before the regular season starts and make preseason predictions. We come back to these predictions at the end of the season, see who got more right, and declare that person the winner of something. We still haven't made a trophy. I need to make a trophy this year or something. And every year so far, Mike has fluked his way into a victory.
Where's my trophy? Where's my trophy?
Entirely flukes. Not this year. This year, I've polished my crystal ball down a buttload of that limitless pill, and I'm ready to sweep everything. I'm taking it all. And for the second year in a row, we're going to be joined by longtime friend and brilliant baseball mind, Alex Duvall, for our predictions. He loves getting in on these. He's somewhat more radical than me sometimes with these predictions, which is great. If you don't recall, predictions are mostly done in an over-under format, and we'll also offer our thoughts on the overall record as a sort of tiebreaker that we do at the end. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Oh, yeah. Ready to win again? I'm always ready to win again. Please.
We'll see. That's that confidence that will lead to your downfall.
At this point, it's not a rivalry.
You've got Oh, brilliant. All right. Over or under? Bobby Witt Jr. puts up a 9.3 WAR as based on Fangraphs. That's wins above replacement as based on Fangraphs. Last year he put together a 10.4 WAR. Is he going to go over or under 9.3? Mike?
I'm going to go under here, and that is simply because I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be Bobby Witt Jr. I think we're going to love what he does. But a 9.3 is a hell of a season. I mean, 8 is a hell of a season. I think he gets somewhere close, but I doubt he goes over. So I'm going under.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't think people realize, like, he's the first shortstop ever to put up 10 F4, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know what the next closest was. I think A-Rod and Frankie Lindor maybe got into the 9s at some point, but like that season we saw from Bobby Witt Jr. legitimately may never happen again. Like, he could play the rest of his life, get better, but if the scope of the league improves at all and catches up to him on the average, like, it's never been done before. It is entirely possible. It's never done again. And yet he might win a couple MVPs. And so we might look back and say, well, those were better years, but yet not 10 F4, right? So I don't know. I think about the year he had last year, and like, out of context, it was impressive by itself in a vacuum. But you add context to that, and it legitimately may never happen again.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He could make it into the Hall of Fame without any more 10 WAR seasons. Like, Mike Trout's going to make it, and I don't know, he may have had one, I can't remember exactly, but like he could have a whole bunch of like 8, 9 F4 seasons, and he may not make it over 9.3, right? That's sort of the thing. I'm going under as well, because I think it's too much to expect him to be like a superhuman again. Although I did have to think about it, because part of me was also like, I mean, he's still young. He gets better every single year. And so much of what went right for him last year really just should go right for him. Like, his expected batting average wasn't way over his batting average or anything like that. His expected outcomes weren't way below what he actually got. And so I'm looking at him, I'm like, he's still got the speed. He's still going to get a bunch of infield hits.
Yeah,
he's still going to get a bunch of doubles and triples. The big question mark is health. Like, will he play as many games as he played last year? With that sort of pushed me over the edge of hedging. He's going to be under 9.3 just in case he has a couple weeks of a hamstring or something. But we'll see. I wouldn't shocked if I'm wrong on this one and he goes over again. This is Alex's boy, Vinny Pasquantino, over under 112 weighted runs created plus. I put it in this number because I thought it might torture us at 112 here.
This was by far the hardest one. Yes.
Over under.
This was the hardest one that you had. That was the one that kind of tortured me a little bit. I went under, and I did that because I feel like he's going to improve and still not quite get over that mark. I just don't see him getting demonstrably more extra base hits than what we've seen without some sort of change in how much he lofts the ball, and that's difficult to do. And so I thought, you know what? Vinny Pasquantino can be a better player and still not quite hit this. You know, what was he, 105, 108 last year?
107, I believe.
107. Yeah, so I feel good in saying I think he's going to even take a small step forward and still not get there.
I will go over because I'm looking at his projections right now on Fangraphs. The lowest projection that anybody has put out for him is 112. Like, I think it's way more likely he goes to 120 than he does to like 100, right? My question more for Vinny is not necessarily the production, because I think in terms of his batted ball profile, in terms of what we know about Vinny, I think he's in for a big year. I the hamstring thing again brings up the question is like how many games can we get out of him, right? Is like I don't know. So when I was reading your notes on this, Marcus, my immediate thoughts were, oh, he's going over 112 for sure. But then the question I really have is like, and how many plate appearances?
Hmm.
Because if he only has 260 again, like he did in 2023, it's not going to be enough to help this team achieve its goals. But if he has another 550 at the production that I think he's going to get, I really think this team is going back to the postseason.
Something to
Well,
remember on that hamstring too. Vinny is a notoriously slow starter, and now he's got to stop for a little bit and then start again, and that kind of scares me as well.
Well, so you'll notice as we move through this list that I intentionally chose categories where you two wouldn't necessarily have to play doctor and try and negotiate like how much is this guy going to play. I thought about doing that, but then I'm like they don't know. Like some of it's fluky, right? Like you can't really know some of that stuff, and so I put it as kind of a stat that we, regardless of how healthy he is, although. Alex's point does point out that, or does make a great point with the health thing, not just in terms of how many games he'll play, but how effective he could be. We saw him in the playoffs last year, coming off that thumb injury, coming back quickly. He was not the same hitter in the playoffs that he was previous to that thumb injury. And as a result, the same thing could be true of any other type of injury he might have. And so those things may hamper that weighted runs created plus output. I went under, and I'll probably use the same reasoning that Mike has, which is I think he can still be a super productive hitter at 110 weighted runs created. I think it's going to be tiny. Whether he's over or under on this one, it is going to be within a very tight band in my mind. That's like 110 to 120. I don't think he's going above 120, and I don't think he's going, it could, well, 105. We'll call it 105 to 120, right? Like, I don't think he's going anywhere else other than that, but it's going to be real, real tight. Jonathan India brought in to secure a much better leadoff production for the Royals. I thought about going with his OPP, but that seemed too obvious to me, so I went with number of runs scored. Jonathan India over or under 95 runs scored. Mike.
I'm going over here. I like what I've seen in spring training, and you have a little bit of a battery behind you. Yeah, you're going to be that guy that gets on base, big outfield for him to knock those singles into, because or even into the gap. So yeah, I definitely think he's going to go over. And if he does, I think that's kind of the driving engine of your offense is Jonathan India getting across the plate, Bobby Witt Jr. getting across the plate in the middle of the lineup, driving him in.
Does it change your mind if I tell you that only something like 12 to 14 players went over 100 runs scored last year, and many of them were power hitters who could knock themselves in?
No, because he's got power hitters behind him that can knock him in. And he's got and I think this is a very lopsided lineup. They're going to score runs. I think it's all coming from the top. And I think it's going to be him quite a bit. And he's going to play every single day. If he's healthy, he's playing like every day.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, I'm gonna go way over, and my
Way over?
way over. And here's my thinking. So Bobby Witt Jr. scored 125 runs last year, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
125, and you're telling
He
me
played like 162 games.
Jonathan India is going to play over 150.
Yeah, and so that's agreed. And so if Bobby Witt Jr. is scoring 125, and Jonathan India is getting on base 35% of the time, like he's going to score over 100 runs. Like that's what they brought him here to do, right? I think
It is.
Jonathan India is one of the best on base hitters in baseball. Scored 84 runs last year.
Just 84.
With a rotating door of guys behind him until they got Ellie De La Cruz established, and then even then they had some other guys moving around. I really think Jonathan India, like as a table setter, was the perfect move for what the Royals need, which is why they traded Brady Singer, right? So we'll get to Jonathan. I mean, we could talk about Jonathan India more if you want, just overall. But I think like he encapsulates exactly what the Royals did not have. And if you assume any rate of consistent production from Bobby Witt Jr. in the 2-hole, in any amount of health from Vinny in the 3-hole or whoever is back there, like any amount of improvement, and Jonathan India is going to score over 100 runs.
Yes, ultimately, I had to agree with you. I went over as well because of those factors. This is more a question about Bobby Witt Jr. almost than it is about Jonathan India, because what's Bobby Witt Jr. going to do, right? Like, although Mike or Alex points out he scored 125, Bobby Witt Jr. had like a 385 on base or something like last year. India is not going to do that. He might put up a 350 on base, which is great. And Bobby Witt Jr. is going to hit a lot of doubles into gaps and triples into gaps that are going to score Jonathan India, but don't be shocked if it's not like 120 for India, because he's going to have to get on base enough. He's going to have to do all these different things enough. A lot of different things can happen. And so 95 runs scored, we're all going over, but there's a reason only something like 12 or 14 guys made it over 100 runs scored last year. Next up, one of the guys who we do have to question or factor in health, Michael Massey. Didn't want to talk too much about his health because who knows. But one of the things he needs to improve on is chasing. Michael Massey, over under 36% chase rate.
Yeah, I went under because I think I looked at the history of it, and that was like the highest he'd ever been. I think last year might have been was that the highest he'd ever been? Or no, or
Close.
I can't remember. Yeah. It just seemed extremely, extremely high. So I was like, okay, I think he probably brings it down a little bit. I would hope that's something that they're consistently working on with him. He's going to, I think, get a chance to play quite a bit this year too, as long as the back is okay. This was a tough one too, but I went under.
Alex?
It's a really, really good number. I am like the way you were with Vinny and his.
I mean, it's not a good number. You don't want him to have that number.
In Las Vegas, it would be a great number. The book would be very happy with you for what you came up with there. I will say under because I'm with Mike. I think the number is high enough to assume any rate of improvement brings it below the under. But I also think that like Michael Massey was in a position last year where the more he swung, it felt like the hotter he got. Kind of like a shooter in basketball where all right, he's missing his shots, and he just needs to see one go in. Well, the way you get that is to keep shooting, right? You have to like shoot yourself out of a slump. And so Michael Massey, the way he kind of hit himself out of a slump last year was to just keep swinging. And then eventually, I can't remember what it was. There was like a moment, there was a game, and I should have done a little more research, but because I can't remember it, but I remember specifically like a game where Michael Massey had like 3 extra base hits maybe early June, and it was like, all right, here we go, and it's just like just keep swinging, almost like a Salvador Perez approach. So I'd like to think that he's going to go under, but part of me wonders too if like the strategy isn't let's just go the other way and just swing, 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 and Salvador Perez our way into being a semi-productive average hitter.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, and it wouldn't surprise me if he does go over this, just because when he gets hot, he does start just swinging, 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 swinging. The guy swings constantly when he feels like he has confidence and he's in a groove, and I think he's going to be hitting a lot in that like 5-6 range, and he'll have some guys on base in front of him, and when that's the case, guess what he wants to do? He wants to knock them in, and so he's swinging, 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 and so. I chose under just because for all the reasons you guys said. He has been under in the past, like 32 and 35%, I think were roughly his previous chase rates, but that's not significantly under. And so you can't be like, well, this one's an outlier. It's not necessarily an outlier. It's right in there, and so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes over, but I'm going to go under just by a little bit. Let's talk about another guy with some swinging tendencies, Salvador Perez. Last year saw his career high walk rate of, I forget what it was, like 6.7% or something like that. I went a little bit lower than that and said Salvador Perez over under 6.5% walk rate. 6.5% walk rate.
Are you insane?
Yeah.
I thought this one was stupid.
If you ask any of my previous girlfriens, yes, I am.
6.5%. He's going way under this, man. He never had over 4 until last year, I don't think. So, like, what?
He's learning as he gets older, learning that plate discipline.
No. There's way too much data to support the fact that he's going way under this. Most of his walk rates, I think, are in the 3s, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yes, he's going under. Should be by quite a bit.
Alex?
Oh, Mark, if you'd set the number at 5.5, we might have been able to have a good conversation about this because I think that's a better line. 6.5 is wild for Salvador Perez. That is a wild number.
It is.
That is a
But I
wild.
believe I
Do you,
believe
so
that
do
he
you
is
think he's going
improving.
over?
I do. I put down over. And then let me give you my rationale for why. One, he is learning more plate discipline. He understands that pitchers are going to try and throw him sliders away, right? So last year I don't think was a fluke in terms of the number of walks that he took, right? But also, he is the last guy in their lineup that teams really have to worry about. So how many intentional walks is he going to get next year? This year?
He'll get some of those intentional ones.
Yeah, he'll get quite a few of those intentional walks. Might even throw in 5 or so intentional walks, right? And maybe that pushes him up above 6.5. It's not a high number. It's not a high number by other people's standards, and so all he has to do is hold on to some of that plate discipline and then move away when teams are trying to essentially pitch around him.
I will say he maintained that walk rate all year last year. It's
all
not
year.
like
It wasn't
off
like a
super significantly.
Yeah, and we've seen that in years past where he'd come out and like start taking some walks early in the season and then forget how to do it about a quarter of the way through, and so hopefully he can hold on to the memory of how to take walks as the season goes. This next one, Mike put an interesting note on that I can't wait to say. MJ Melendez, over under 400 plate appearances for this year. Mike?
Yes. Mark, the interesting note that Mark has is I put over and then I put Zorp help us because I do not want it to be over. I do not want him to have over 400 plate appearances. Not from what I've seen.
What if he's crushing it?
Here's the thing. I don't think he has to really be crushing it. And I think they're still going to put him in there. I think they're going to be like, hey, the potential to hit one out. He doesn't play us the best left field, but I don't know that they're going to love India or Massey out there. And so I think he's kind of going to get plate appearances by default to try and get him going. I also think he's a left-handed bat off the bench that they might like to try because he's got some pop. But geez, I think he's going to go over mostly because God doesn't, like me, and they want me to watch more MJ Melendez at bats. So
hey, don't forget, he did hit a pinch hit walk-off home run, I think, last year at one point, like his first pinch hit appearance ever or something like that. He comes in first pinch hit he ever got a hit, knocked one out for him, won a game. Just saying. Alex, what do you think?
It's going to be barely over, and it's going to crush me, except for when I win this.
I'm going to say under, but I can't tell you why until later on in the show.
Okay. It's a little mystery element. Alex knows how to do this podcast thing.
He's foreshadowing.
He's teasing. He's throwing out a little teaser there. I like that. I'm going to say under just because I think the whole idea behind keeping him and maybe keeping Renfroe and maybe keeping Marcana is they want to continue the audition for another month or so. And if he's not producing, I don't think they'll really give him a ton of opportunity after about a month or two if he's not producing. And so I went with under because I'm not seeing enough out of that new swing to say that the offense will be productive. And so, I think it'll be mostly the Renfroe Cano show after, say, 2 months of the season. Or maybe India gets better. They just try something else, I think. Which brings up another interesting tidbit here or question. Hunter Renfroe, 400 plate appearances, over or under?
So I went under for 2 reasons. One, I don't think he's going to be productive enough for them to play regularly. I think they're doing everything they can not to play him regularly. Okay, so I don't see a lot of, he's not going to get defensive replacement. He's not really going to be placing anybody. He might be a pinch hit guy if there's a lefty in who doesn't throw too hard. You might be okay with him, but I don't see that happening that much. The other reason was he might not even be on the team. So if he's not on the team, I'm going to win this one easy. So there we go.
Alex?
Mike, did you take under on Melendez or over?
I took over, but okay. I hated it. I think it's just going to be barely over because that's how it works, man.
Okay, so I was looking at these two, and I still got we're going to come back to this. I don't know how you can have under on Melendez and Renfroe at the moment. Like the more I look at their roster construction, if you don't think that either of those guys is getting 400 plate appearances,
and I think it's going to be the younger guy.
Which one?
MJ is younger, so I'm taking him.
Gotcha. Okay. I was going to insert somebody else. We'll come back to it.
Right.
But if you don't if you don't think that either of those guys is getting 400 plate appearances, I don't know who you think is. Like, unless I've got an idea, but unless you explicitly tell me who you think is getting those plate appearances, it's like they did nothing to actually address like their outfield issues. And I mean, looking at it now, unless Jonathan India or Massey is going to play outfield like on a regular basis, which if Massey plays any amount of significant time in left field, Melendez's numbers are going way down in terms of plate appearances because that's going to be your left-handed outfield bat. So to answer the question, I'm under on Melendez. I'm over on Renfroe. I actually thought Hunter Renfroe had some productive looking at bats when he got healthy last year. All the projections still think he can be a semi-productive league average hitter. I think they like his arm in the outfield combined with he seems to really fit in the clubhouse well. If Hunter Renfroe is healthy, which for a guy at this age, at this stage in the game is a big if, I think if we're talking about performance, I actually think he goes over. And part of that is I don't know who you replace him with if some of these other guys are also not getting the playing time.
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
my third reason for going under on him. There's a good chance they go out and get somebody to replace him if they're in a playoff hunt. And he goes from, I've got 200 at-bats in the first half or 250 at-bats to like, I got 40 in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
I
I'm
could see
going
that.
over, and here's why. I'm buying a minor Hunter Renfroe resurgence. I'm buying a minor Hunter Renfroe bounce back. I liked what I saw in spring training, and I'm not just talking about the numbers. I'm talking about the fact that he's clearly lighter. I'm talking about the fact that the plate appearances looked good. I'm also talking about the fact that the launch angle looks pretty good, and maybe he didn't have a sense of how tough it was going to be to hit balls out of Kaufman and didn't really understand that I need to really line balls into gaps here rather than like trying to really muscle ones out. Or he hit way too many ground balls last year. It was driving me nuts. But anyway, I'm going to go over because I'm buying a minor bounce back for Hunter Renfroe. Is he going to be a 130 weighted runs created plus guy? I doubt it. But can he be 105? Maybe. I think he can maybe do that. All right.
You guys are giving me so many chances to win this again. So many chances.
A guy we need to sort of see more offensive production from is up next. That's Maikel Garcia. He'll be our last position player here. Well, maybe a special surprise coming later. Maikel Garcia, over under 47% ground ball rate.
I'm going over, and I think this was strictly like a kind of regression thing where I was like, okay, I went and looked at his numbers, and 47 would be about where he was everywhere except for last year. Am I right on that?
Last year he was like 49.
Oh, yeah. So this would have to be another improvement. Yeah, that's what it was. Because I think it was in the 50s before that. So this would have to be another step forward, and I don't see that happening. So I went over.
Alex?
You know, when I was thinking about this today, I honestly don't know if in terms of the distribution of line drives, fly balls, ground balls for Maikel Garcia is his problem. I think it's more geared toward which direction he is hitting it. And so I'm going to cop out. I'll answer the question. I think he goes over on the ground balls because we've always seen him do that. I will rephrase a new question to you guys. His career high in terms of pull percentage, how many balls he pulls, is 33.1%. Are we confident that he can beat that number and get it to like 35, 36, 37% this year and start pulling? Like, this is an ironic twist because most hitters legitimately have an over pulling problem, but it's better to pull, like statistically speaking, it is better to pull the ball than to not pull the ball. And when you get all of your fly balls, all the balls in the air going to one spot, you are easy to defend. Felt like last year, Maikel Garcia would line a ball into the gap in right center. It's like, hey, there's a triple, and there's a guy standing right there because they know exactly where he's going to hit it because he can't pull it. So I do think the ground balls are going over. By the way, in spring training, 60% of his batted balls are on the ground.
Yep, I brought that up to Mike too.
but
and 47 would be his highest or his best ground ball percentage. That would be
but
the best.
38% have been to the pull side. So can we start to shift these batted balls to the pull side where he can drive them with a little more authority, actually spread these batted balls out a little bit, and create a little more of a batting average on balls in play opportunity for himself.
Yes, and there are so many levels to this analysis of Michael Garcia. I'm going to go over as well because I think he's going over that 40, sadly, going over for that 47% ground ball rate. I think I mentioned in an episode, I think it was a midweek episode during the offseason, that if Michael Garcia pulls the ball at 35%, he will drastically improve offensively. I believe that that's the case. But there are elements, there are like levels to his profile, right? So if you go look at his numbers, most guys, the reason they have more success pulling the ball is because they actually hit the ball a little bit harder when they pull it, right? And so generally speaking, pulling the ball is a little bit more advantageous. He is not that way. He actually hits the ball just as hard to the opposite field and center field as he does to the pull side. However, I do not believe that he is not capable of pulling the ball in the air. Like he hits those line drives over second base all the time. He can hit the ball the opposite field in the air. When he pulls it, for some reason, it's on the ground. If he can start to get those balls that he's pulling in the air and start pulling them more, he'll have a lot more success. But even if he just does the exact same in terms of ground ball, fly ball, that stuff, I still think he should pull it more because of what Alex is talking about. It changes his profile. He's a lot more likely to get those sort of doubles down the line and stuff like that. I'm going over for the ground ball rate, but we need to see more from Michael Garcia. Let's go to the pitchers. People are tired. Oh, guys, this segment is going to be huge because I couldn't choose between all these. We have a ton of to go through. Cole Reagan's 9% walk rate over under. He was under last year, but Mike, looks like you're going over.
Yeah, and I'm just going over because I think that's going to be part of the book on him for a lot of people. I think they're going to try and wait things out, try and get walks, try and move runners in a traditional sense. I think basically what I'm saying is Cole Reagan's going to start to be treated like an ace by opposing lineups. And that means you're going to be playing the get on base game. So I do expect the walk rate to go up a little bit. This was another tough one, I thought, but I was going to go with that because the year before that, I think it was 10, if I'm not mistaken. And so I thought, okay, yeah, it was 10.5 the year before that. And so the year before last year. So I'm betting on a little bit of regression there.
Alex?
I think originally I said, I don't remember what I put in the Google Doc, but I'm going to go
Over.
under. I'm going to go
Okay.
under. I'm changing my mind. I'm going under. He has improved his zone percentage in terms of the number of sheer strikes that he is throwing every year that he's been in Major League Baseball. And I was looking at this earlier, and then for whatever reason, I took it down. Here it is. Let me get this pulled up for you because I think, if I remember correctly, let's see. Yeah, I mean, he is like league median in terms of balls in the strike zone. Like he's really like fairly effective at it. Like he's getting better, right? So it's not like he's a wild card that relies on guys chasing, which, by the way, he does get a lot of that as well, so it's helpful. But he's getting better and better and better at throwing the ball in the zone, forcing guys to swing at his pitch. I actually think this is something that works in Reagan's favor in terms of the walk rate. The thing that I'm curious about is that better for him? Like, would it be better for Cole Reagans to, what was his walk rate last year? 8.8. Would it be better for that to go down even further or stay at like 9% just for that effectively wild cliche, right? Like just to keep guys from swinging too much. I do think that's actually a thing for a lot of pitchers is you start to attack the zone too much, you become a little bit too predictable. There are a lot of guys who have had a lot of success with walk numbers that are a little bit inflated. And not that you want them to be inflated. Like anytime you can cut down on free passes, great. But sometimes it is semi-beneficial to carry that effectively wild status to work around the other team's best hitters, to force them to come to you. Max Fried comes to mind. Like isn't an elite guy, keep guys off base in terms of walks. So anyway, I'm rambling, but like I could see it coming down, but I also don't know that it needs to. Like I think Cole Reagans is in a really good spot, regardless of whether it comes down or not.
Well, and I think he's the kind of pitcher that, especially in the division that we're in, where you don't have teams that have dominant lineups necessarily, you're going to see him kind of go, okay, well, when Jose Ramirez comes up, he's not going to beat me. I'm not going to let him do this. So if I walk Jose Ramirez, who cares? You know, if two of the three Twins good hitters are out for injury, like they always are, then I'm just going to walk the guy, you know. I'm not going to let, you know, their best hitters beat me in this division because there's not lineups that are deep enough to really hurt a guy like him. So, yeah, that's why I think maybe it is a good thing that it stays up there. You almost convinced me to change mine. I'm going to stick with mine because I'm a winner, damn it. But that was a good argument there, Alex.
Yeah, sure. I'm going over for all the reasons Mike said, a little bit of regression, but also just I think teams have seen him longer now, and as a result, when they're a little more comfortable against your stuff, you get a little more hesitant to throw it right in the strike zone. And I think that might not be that might end up being the case for him. He gets hit maybe a little bit at some games and he starts getting a little gun shy in the zone. And so still think he's going to be fine in terms of overall production. But if it slides up to 9.3 or 9.5, it's not the end of the world for him. Seth Lugo, we're going with the number 2 starter. We had to put in something for him because last year he had such a remarkable season. The question is it going to stay that remarkable? So Seth Lugo over under 3.5 ERA in 2025.
I'm going over, and you and I have kind of talked about this already on the podcast. He can have a great year and not be as good as he was last year, because last year it was fantastic. He was number 2 in Cy Young, I think, over 200 innings. Like I say he probably goes somewhere between 3, 5, and 4, and I think we're still really happy with what we get from Seth Lugo. And actually, this last game that he pitched in spring training, I think was a really good kind of picture of what he, I think, will be as a pitcher, a starter again this year. He gave up 3 earned runs. He gave up some hard hits. He didn't give up a lot of hits. He had a lot of strikeouts still. It was like a vintage Lugo outing, and you would love it in the regular season, but it was 3 earned runs in 5 innings. You know, that's going to get you an ERA above 3.5. So,
Alex?
Seth Lugo is like the epitome of, I just don't know if there's enough information available to make a really educated guess. So
we love uneducated things on this podcast.
We've never let that stop educated?
Us in the past. No.
So I think for the sake of the answer, I'm going to go under. But here's what goes into it for me. So Seth Lugo is 35. If you go back to 2019, here are his innings pitched per season in the big leagues: 80, 36, 46, 65, 146, and then last year 206 innings in the big leagues. He's already got 18 innings in spring training this year, which you could add spring training innings on to every year so far. But there's 2 ways of looking at this. Number one, you got a 35-year-old who just blew his season workload record out of the water. It's ain't close. Number 2, you've got a starting pitcher with not a lot of miles on him who could theoretically then work in his favor in terms of long-term workload. I don't know what to expect from Seth Lugo. If he went out and had the exact same season, 3 ERA, 4.7 FWAR, second or third in Cy Young voting, I would be shocked. I would legitimately be shocked. But if he went out there, and I was looking at some of the qualified pitchers from last year. Like, let's take, Jameson Taillon, for example. 165 innings, 3.27 ERA, 2.5 wins. Like, would something like that shock me? Not at all. Or even Max Fried, 174 innings, 3.25 ERA. Like, there's a lot of outcomes where Seth Lugo doesn't come close to matching the standard he set last year and is still a really productive pitcher under that 3.5 ERA number. So I'm going to go under, but I don't know how to peg him in terms of what I think he's going to be this year, because I'm worried about the workload, but at the same time, like, if you sold me on, well, there's no long-term workload to be wary of, I'm like, well, there's also that. And it's a legitimately good point that I don't know which one is more important in that conversation.
Yeah, I often think to myself, like, I've heard people argue on the other side of that. That's like, yes, we have like empirical evidence that says pitch counts and things like that can lead to things like injury. but there actually isn't great empirical evidence that an increase in innings load can, as long as you're sticking to a good program, taking care of your arm, doing the things you're supposed to be doing in the offseason, all that sort of thing. Is that right? I don't know. I don't know if there's empirical evidence to back either way, right? And so I'm going over just because when they signed Lugo, I expected him to be somebody in that 3.5 to 4 range in terms of ERA. He beat those expectations by a lot last year, but you always get you saw stretches there where he could definitely get hit, right? And so yeah, he plays in a weak division with weak offenses, but has a little worse outcomes here and there. And all of a sudden, he's still a very productive pitcher, but he's got a 3.7 or something like that. Yeah. All right, moving on to some minor league pitcher because I wanted to get him in here. Friend of the show, Noah Cameron, over under 5 games started this year for the Kansas City Royals.
Well, because he was on the podcast, I do think he will make his major league debut this year.
Right, that's the Royals Weekly Bump.
That's got to happen. That's just what happens.
That's going to happen. That's the Royals Weekly Bump.
But I think the reason that I'm going under is I think there's a chance that maybe another friend of the show gets some of those starts in Alec Marsh. I think Kyle Wright at some point maybe gets a look there as well. Daniel Lynch is already in the bullpen, possibly gets stretched out. I just think there's enough competition for him that if he doesn't succeed at a high level early on in the year, that other guys might come in to become that 6th guy, 7th guy, and he might kind of get put on the back burner. So I think he makes a few starts, but I think they probably happen in the second half.
Alex?
I'm going way over. I think he gets close to a dozen starts. Michael Wacha historically is like a 23, 24 start guy. So if you need 162, that I'll pencil Michael Wacha in for like 25. Chris Bubich is coming off Tommy John surgery. I'm not penciling him in for more than 20 for any reason, really. So that gets us to 45. Even if you think Cole Reagans is going for another 32, again, a 2-time Tommy John guy, I think I disagree, but I'll give you 30. That gets us to 70. And then you have 90 starts that we have to get somewhere out of the last 2 guys in the rotation. Right. So you have 2 guys left in the rotation, and Seth Lugo and Michael Lorenzen, who is an often used bullpen arm and swing guy. There's no way, in my opinion, a rotation.
Who got hurt last year too, by the way. He missed starts last year.
Absolutely. Alec Marsh, bullpen guy, probably. Daniel Lynch, same. Chris Bubich, Tommy John. Michael Lorenzen, bullpen guy. Noah Cameron's going to get a dozen or more starts, I think. Unless, like you said, Mike, unless Alec Marsh comes on and, whoa, that guy's a bona fide starter, and they just decide to run Chris Bubich out there every chance they get because he's only got a couple years left on his rookie deal. I really think Noah Cameron is going to get a dozen big league starts. And based on what I saw this spring, he's made a couple adjustments. I'm like way more excited for him now than I was in January. So let's go Noah Cameron. I'm penciling Noah Cameron into about a dozen starts this year.
I'm going over with you, Alex, because for all the same reasons that you said, but the big one that sort of stands as a linchpin for me is Lorenzen and the uncertainty really with sort of performance and injury history, right? The guy's had a not insignificant injury history and always sort of toes that line of, am I going to miss enough bats to be a viable major league starter? And then Bubich, you just don't know what's going to happen there with how many innings they're going to let him pitch. And so I think I think they've made it clear that Noah Cameron's the next guy up. I think he would have to do something very bad in AAA. I think he would have to be getting shellacked in AAA to not be the next guy to come up and make some significant starts. And who knows when that's going to happen? Could be as early as 3 weeks into the season. Pitcher injuries happen all the time, and they're not going to be as healthy as they were last year. So, it's really, I think, a matter of time, and I think he'll get more than 5. Here's a guy we just talked about who is interesting. I put this because I wanted to have the conversation about pitcher workload and what we should do with that sort of thing. Chris Bubich, 135 innings pitched, over or under, Mike?
I'm going under. I did a similar thing to what Alex was talking about here. I went and said, hey, how many starts can I, realistically expect him to make? And then I took that times 5 because I don't think they're going to let him go deeper than 5 innings very often. I think that's going to be one of the ways that they try to limit his innings is, okay, we're going to let you go through the order twice, maybe a third time if you've shown to be really effective, but we're not going to have you throwing over 100 pitches consistently over and over and over again. And so that's why I went under on this one. I think if he stays healthy-ish, I think he gets really close to that number, but I doubt he goes over.
Alex?
One thing that I look for in Tommy John recoveries is like that dead arm period. I think Shane McClanahan's a great example in this spring training. Like that nerve issue he had flare up in his tricep. Like UCL reconstruction is a major surgery. They're taking a tendon and turning it into a ligament in your arm, and your body has to adjust because it's turning a tendon into a ligament. Even if Chris Bubich's UCL is intact and healthy, there are so many other things that could pop up that I'm not comfortable saying he's going to set a career high in big league innings this year. So I'm going to go under. However, I will add an asterisk in that I do not think it's going to be a performance thing. I like everything I've seen from Chris Bubich. His strikeouts like have increased exponentially ever since he made that arm slot adjustment and added a slider. It's also helped him keep the walks down because, I mean, ironically, the pros and cons of dropping that arm slot down is it's a lot easier to command the ball north and south. It also isn't as good for your elbow. And so we've seen both those things with Chris Bubich like really quickly. So I'm going to go under on the innings, but like if it's 125, I wouldn't be shocked. I just think there's so many factors that pop up that I wouldn't be comfortable penciling him in for a full 140, 135.
I'm going to go over mostly because I'm the wild card of the group, I feel like, but also because I think this coaching staff and front office showed last year that they're more comfortable having guys throw way more innings than they did the previous year than most other coaching staffs, most other teams, right? Like you look at Lugo, Waka, Reagans, Singer, they all posted career highs in innings pitched last year. And some of them were way above previous highs. You mentioned Lugo went at least 60 innings more than he did. Reagans went like 85, 100 innings more than he did the year before. This would be about 100 innings more than Chris Bubich did last year. I think they'll be tight with him, like you're talking about, Mike. I think they're going to be like, oh, if he shows even the slightest sign of discomfort out on the mound, like they are with Reagans, he's out of the game, right? Like, but I also think that they're going to be like, hey, if you're putting in your work, if you're getting recovery, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, we're going to let you go out there and pitch, because I think they think that it's not dangerous for him to go out and pitch. Like I think they have bought into the notion that your innings number isn't as important as your pitch load in a given game. And so we'll see on that front, but it would not surprise me if he goes over 135.
And to be fair, by the way, we should add in his minor league innings last year because they're every bit as competitive when you're rehabbing. And he got 66 innings total between the minors and the majors. So 135, I guess, is closer to only doubling that than tripling it. So that
Yeah.
that honestly may not be as bad of a number as I thought, Mark.
Oh, Mark's doing some good stuff now, is he? I see. Let's go to the bullpen. We're only going to get one bullpen name, and I promise only a couple more left. Carlos Estevez, over under 3 ERA.
Over under 3 ERA. This also seemed like a very easy one to me. He's going over. I like the acquisition. I think he can be an effective pitcher, but it's hard to go under a 3 ERA even as a bullpen guy. And he's only done it once in his career, I think. If I'm not mistaken, let me look real quick. I just had it pulled up, but now it's gone. Oh, there it is. ERA. Look at some of these are 5.5, 4.38. Sorry. No, yeah, that's right. Just once in his career. It was last year. Oh, and also he's like 33 years old. And so I don't expect him to do this again. I think he can help. I think he can provide good innings out of the bullpen, be that kind of complementary piece with Ursig. But no, he's definitely going over 3.
Alex?
I'm going to go under. And I think the one thing that like I would love to know more about, like I don't know anything about Carlos Estevez other than he had a great year last year. And I mean, I've seen him pitch. I understand what he did last year. I don't understand how it's different than his career norms. Like his career totals for walks per nine are 3.5. Last year it was under 2. So he got out of Colorado, which, thank God, good for him, right? Getting out of Colorado is a great thing for pitchers. But then in 2023, he goes to LA, and who knows why? Maybe he has to totally reinvent his arsenal due to the altitude. I don't know. But his walks per nine are 4.5. Now his strikeouts shot way up, but maybe he looked at that and thought, you know what? I've got to reinvent myself. I'm 30 years old. I had a 3.9 ERA this year. Yeah, I'm striking guys out, but I'm walking way too many. So he goes out last year, and his strikeouts are way back down, a career low for strikeouts, and also a career low for walks and home runs allowed. I would be fascinated to read, because I've not seen anything about it. What did Carlos Estevez do last year to completely reinvent himself? I mean, he was a completely different pitcher by every measure imaginable. Everything he did was different. Not and better, by the way. Like, he reinvented himself and became exponentially more valuable. So I'd love to know what he did. I'd love to know what the change is. Um, but I'm going to go under. I'm going to say that he gets in there with Brian Sweeney, a good defense, and a good pitcher's park, and has another really good year out of the Royals bullpen.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go over, but I think it's just going to be barely over, and I think it's because I think you're right, Alex. I think if I remember correctly, and I've read so many things and stuff like that, he did improve one or two of his pitches. I think his breaking pitches, and as a result, he's more comfortable throwing them in the zone. And he improved his command just slightly. That got his walks under control, and he's got better breaking stuff, and so guys could stay off the breaking stuff. He was previously like a fastball pitcher all the time, just threw like 70% fastballs. But now he's coming in with better breaking stuff, can mix it up a little bit more, and hitters can't just sit on that fastball and spit on every breaking pitch. And so, yeah, I'm going over, but I still think he's going to be a productive reliever for the Royals. Let's get into our surprise. We have one to end this segment. We're going back to position players. A little surprise for everybody. Surprise, Jack Caglione. Over under 150 plate appearances for the Kansas City Royals, the major league team this year. Mike, what are your thoughts on Jack Caglione's plate appearances?
My thoughts are sane thoughts, so so it's under because I'm not a lunatic. All right, it would be interesting to see, I guess, but no, I don't want necessarily Jack Caglione to get 150 plate appearances. It'll be very interesting to see what he does in the first half of the year. Is he going down there and is he just overmatching AA pitchers and just cranking balls out left and right? Then we can have a conversation. But no way. Under for sure.
Alex?
Not so fast, my friends.
Oh, please.
He's going way over.
Get out of here.
No, way over. Can we talk about this for a minute?
Yeah.
Last year he had like 5 bad games at high A. For the rest of the year, after he got those bad games out of the way, 18.7% on the strikeout rate. This is like, he is legitimately like a bigger, badder version of Salvador Perez. And I don't mean that, like, Salvador Perez led the league in home runs one year and RBI, and I think sometimes people confuse Salvador Perez's old defensive prowess, leadership skills, World Series, like the accolades that come with him as a catcher, with being an actually like elite MLB hitter. Salvador Perez is a great hitter for a catcher. He is not a great major league hitter, like historically in his career. He's about league average. He's been pretty good with a lot of power potential, a few years where he really popped. But for the most part, Salvador Perez has been a good to great hitter, not elite. Everything that Salvador Perez does well, Jack Caglione does as good, maybe better, because he's got, like, he's playing first base. He's not catching every game, where at the end of the year he's going to be more tired. And by the way, I know Salvi is a monster. Jack Caglione's got more raw power. Like,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, like it's insane. It is utterly insane what this guy's capable of. And when the Royals drafted him last year, guys, we were together. We talked about this live. I wasn't the biggest fan. I was worried they were going to actually try to two-way him. I was worried the strikeouts would catch up to him. There is nothing about this guy's game that makes me think that those concerns are legitimate. Like, there is, I, I am so excited by what I've seen from Jack Caglione. I was doing the math. Like, 150 plate appearances is less than 40 games. You're telling me that in August, after the All-Star break, the Royals are a little bit above 500. They're in the thick of it, but they're not there. MJ Melendez not hitting. Mark Canha's not hitting. Hunter Renfro's not hitting. You know what they're going to do, right?
I know what I hope they're going to be able to do.
There's no way. If that's the situation, they're going to trade for somebody before August.
No, he's going to have 40 home runs because here's the thing, too. He's going to hit in the Texas League. And if he goes to Omaha for any amount of time, he's going to have 40 home runs, right? I mean, and it wouldn't necessarily, like, that wouldn't even be that ridiculous of a number. MJ
he had like 33 last year during colleges last year, didn't he?
Yeah.
Melendez hit 44, I think, in Omaha one year.
He's going to do something ridiculous. And by the way, I think we've seen a good bit of info lately that, like, the Angels are a good example. Like, they yank guys up to the big leagues all the time, and it hasn't ruined any of them. Like, Zach Neto had a really good year last year after being jerked straight to the big leagues out of Campbell University. He wasn't seeing SEC pitching.
Isn't Matt Shaw going to be playing for the Cubs? Didn't he start for the Cubs the other day?
Absolutely. He didn't even play in the SEC. Jack Caglione has seen SEC pitching. That is the best of the best in the college ranks. He's hammered big league spring training. And if he goes to the minor leagues and has any amount of success, he's going to be in the big leagues, especially if Vinny can't stay healthy and the Royals aren't, like, really running away with the division. I promise you they will go get him. I'll say this. I'll bet the number of his plate appearances is closer to 300 than 100.
You mean in the major leagues?
In the major leagues.
All right. I went
you owe
under.
us a soda pop when you get it wrong. All right.
I went under only because of historical precedent and knowing that, like, it is very rare for any player to move that quickly. I would not be surprised if I'm wrong. I would not be surprised if Alex is right, because you see, Alex and Mike and I have seen enough baseball to know that what we're seeing in spring training from Jack Caglione isn't just about the numbers he's putting up. It's about those plate appearances that we get to see. Maybe it's only been 5 to 10, but what you see is him facing down major league quality pitching or really, really good AA and AAA pitching and just besting those guys, like having better plate appearances than those guys have against him. And when that's the case, and it looks like he's going to go to AA and just absolutely wreck shop in the Texas League, well, shit. I mean, there's nowhere else for him to go. Like, then he's got, and then that there's a place for him in Kansas City. That they need offensive production. And so would I be surprised if he ends up over 150 plate appearances? I would not. I chose 100 as like a prudent move to be like, hey, lots can happen. It's tough. AA and AAA is still real tough for hitters. It's a big jump. We'll see on that front. Guys, we got to wrap this up. This will be our longest episode ever. What are the record predictions? Mike, go. How are the Royals going to do this year?
I'm going 88-74, and they win the Central by a hair over the Minnesota Twins.
Alex.
I said 85-77. I don't know if that's going to be good enough for a wild card spot or not. I think the Guardians win the division. The Guardians, to me, have earned, like, chief status in the AFC West. Like,
I will always give it to them.
I will be picking the Guardians to win the division until somebody proves to me they are beyond a shadow of a doubt a better organization, which nobody can do right now. So I'll take the Guardians to win the division. I am really worried about the workload these pitchers got last year, and maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe that's not fair. But every time I go to evaluate the way that I think the pitching staff is going to look, I do think the bullpen will be better. But this rotation, I don't know. I don't see how this rotation can do what it did last. They had the second and third, right? Lugo and Cole Reagans were second and third in the AL Cy Young. That's not happening again.
I think second and fourth, honestly.
Okay.
But it could have been second and third.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Either way, that's
two
not
top
happening.
5 Cy Young guys.
Yeah, it's not happening again. So I just wonder, will the addition of Jonathan India be enough? Can Massey and Garcia take a step up enough? Can they get any production out of the outfield right now because that's a massive question mark. And then the bullpen, is it going to be as good as advertised? So I do think they take a minor step back, but I think at 85 and 77, they keep their chances for the playoff hunt. And I think that going into 2026, if they can develop a Noah Cameron, a Luindo Avila, grab a couple guys out of the minor leagues, they're really set up well for the future.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and split the difference between the two of you. I went 87 and 75, which would be only a one-game improvement from last year. This is based on the fact that the Royals, I think, have improved as a team. I think adding Jonathan India is a huge move to make because they were so bad from the leadoff last year that getting to even above average, which I think India will be, is a huge step forward for them. I think another huge step that maybe gets talked about less is the improvement of the bullpen as compared to 5/6 of the regular season last year. So for 5 months, that bullpen was pretty atrocious last year, and they still managed to win a lot of games. This year, they're going to not give away one game a series, blowing it in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And so I think that's going to be better as a result. And the third thing that does it is I don't think anyone else in this division did that much to improve. Cleveland got worse this year, right? Like Cleveland definitely got worse. I don't think that they're going to be able to rely on that bullpen to do what it did last year. The Twins got worse, I think, a little bit than they did last year, and they can never stay healthy, right? And they got a year older from all those guys who always get hurt on their team. And then the Tigers did some stuff to get better, but I think that that's a little bit of fool's gold. And I think the Royals are going to be able, and the White Sox somehow, at least on paper, managed to get worse. I mean, like
they did. They absolutely did.
We're going to see how that turns out. Maybe a historic season for the White Sox.
The fighting Chris Getzes are going to be the grittiest team in the league. I'm telling you.
They'll lead the league in polk points. I'll tell you that. You remember that? So you remember that? That's for the oldies. Anyway, we got to thank Alex Duvall. Thank you so much for showing up, for having fun with us for this last segment. It was so much fun. You will be back. Whenever you want to come back, you can come back. But you will also be back when we review these to see who has won, because it's going to be me this year. Thank you so much.
We better have that trophy finished, Mark, for me this year.
I'm going to try.
Hey, sorry that took so long. Love y'all.
I love
the show.
Love it.
Glad to be back.
Good to see you again, Alex.
Take it easy, Alex. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Do you have the same fantasy that we do, retiring to a land of eternal summer? If so, you need to call Eric Oxer of West USA Realty pronto. He can help you transition to a lovely home in the Phoenix area and a life of fun in the sun.
You know, as opposed to the misery of a Kansas City February.
Love those. 12 inches of snow and minus 30 degrees. Yay! Eric was one of the top real estate agents in the Phoenix area to end 2024 because he gives all of his clients a personal experience focused entirely on their needs. With Eric Oxer of West USA Realty, it's not about him. It's about you. He's there to listen to you, work for you, and guide you through the ins and outs of buying and selling in the Phoenix area.
Ins, outs, ups, downs. If there's a direction, this kid's going to cover it, okay? He knows all the directions. Cardinal and intermediate.
He's the Magellan of realtors. Find Eric Oxer of West USA Realty online at ericoxer.com. That's ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just give him a call or shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. If you're at all interested in what a life in the Phoenix area might hold, let him make the experience all about you. It's finally here. On Thursday, March 27th, the Royals will open the regular season with a 3-game series against division rivals Cleveland Guardians. It feels so good to say that. I cannot wait for Thursday.
Yeah.
Got big plans. It's going to be lots of fun. Mike, tell us what we can expect from the Guardian series.
Well, starting out, we got old Cole Reagan. It's going to be Cole Reagan's day, kicker off. I'm excited about that. Versus Tanner Bibby. I always call him Bibby. Some people call him Bibby. It's Bibby, right?
I have no clue.
Me either. 26-year-old right-handed pitcher out of Cal State Fullerton. Good young pitcher, 3.47 ERA with a 1.12 whip last year. He's got a four-seam fastball in the mid-90s, a cutter, a changeup, a curveball, a slider, and a sinker. Mostly goes with the four-seamer, cutter, and change. Teams do struggle against the cutter, but the four-seam fastball they've been hitting well, or did last year anyway. In the game 2, it'll be Seth Lugo versus Luis Ortiz.
We think. I had to kind of just pick data. They don't actually have probables announced right now for that. So
Okay.
I think it's Ortiz.
So we think it's going to be Luis Ortiz, who's a 26-year-old righty out of the Dominican Republic, a 3.32 ERA and a 1.11 WHIP last season, 37 games, 15 starts. So he spent some time in the bullpen as well. Slider, four-seam fastball, averages at 96, sinker, cutter, change. He's a slider first guy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He is, yes, 26% of the time.
There it is. 26% of the time on the slider. The fastballs that he throws, none of them, the four-seamer, the cutter, or the sinker, they are all hittable. And then in that third game, it's Michael Wacha for the Royals, and we think Gavin Williams, the 25-year-old righty out of East Carolina. Promising prospect coming up, big time pitching prospect for them. Struggled a little bit last year, I think, coming off of an injury the year before, if I remember right. 4.86 ERA and a 1.37 WHIP. He's got a four-seam fastball that's 96 to 97, curveball, cutter, slider, changeup, sinker. They beat up on his fastball last year, and he throws it quite a bit. And so see if he can get a little bit more on that fastball, I believe, coming off of, and it should be a whole year removed from that injury.
We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with the Just a Bit Outside segment where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike has something interesting put down here. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure.
Oh, really?
It's gonna
Because
be
I thought maybe you had talked about it at once. I thought maybe you had done it one time. Okay,
I
good.
don't know what this is. So
it's fantastic.
Let's hope it's family friendly because it doesn't necessarily sound family friendly.
We'll
see. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This is your warning. If you're a kid, cover your ears. Mike.
So this is a TV show, and it's a great TV show. I got to give credit to my wife. She said, Mike, she knows that I'm very particular in the television that I watch. I do not like dramas very much. I don't like anything that's going to make me feel sad or just feel. I don't like anything that's going to make me feel.
Mike can't feel feelings anymore.
Okay. And so
it's too hard on him.
It's too hard on me. And so I usually go with sitcoms. I usually go with comedies. And she said, hey, there is, or sometimes I'll do like procedural mysteries where it's like, okay, it's the same thing all the time. You don't really care too much about the characters, but I like the mystery puzzle kind of thing. This thing has both of those things. It's called Bad Monkey. It is on Apple TV. It is hilarious because of Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn is the star of it. And it's like vintage Vince Vaughn, like the sarcasm. You know what he's like? It's like if you took his character from Wedding Crashers and put it in like a cop show.
That's just Vince Vaughn. That's Vince Vaughn playing.
That's just
Vince
how
Vaughn.
He acts, I guess. But it's absolutely hilarious. There's other just great actors and actresses. I don't know any of their names because they're not people that I know that are well known. Although there's a girl in there that you recognize, but just phenomenal stuff from all around. And it's just a really cool story, and it's hilarious. I think it's 10 episodes long, and they're like 40 minutes a piece. So it's like real television here. But it's just a cool mystery story, kind of out there and just hilarious. He's got like this ongoing feud with a real estate agent who's trying to sell a house next to his. It's just hilarious. He puts like a bunch of bees in there, pays a guy to put a bunch of bees in the house.
Classic
it's just,
Vaughn.
I know. And then he like denies all of it. It's hilarious. But yeah, so check that out if you get Apple TV. Bad Monkey. It's worth your time.
I'm speaking about another piece of media that is well worth anyone's time, and I made it worth my partner's time last night. I am, of course, referring to the 1989 hit Roadhouse.
Can't beat it. Cannot beat it.
My partner is younger than me, so she's never seen Roadhouse, right? Like, she doesn't know what that is.
Crime Against America.
She wasn't born when Roadhouse came out. So last night, we're kind of confined to 2 rooms in my house right now because the rest of the house is covered in dust. I thought about talking about my absolute circus shit show with the cleaning service that was supposed to come clean my house on Friday, but we'll come back to that later. Anyway, last night, we're hanging out in our bedroom because it's the only room we can hang out in. And she's like, you want to watch a movie? I'm like, sure, let's watch a movie. But I don't want to watch anything that I have to like care about or anything gets intense or sad. She only likes intense and sad movies. I like, not to being sad all the time. And so I came across Roadhouse and I'm like, have you ever seen Roadhouse? She's like, no. And I'm like, we're watching Roadhouse tonight.
Music
So-
or movie education 101. Here we go.
101. Patrick Swayze, philosopher / bouncer.
Philosopher
and
/ bouncer with an amazing roundhouse kick.
yes. And so we
Eastern
watched Roadhouse.
mystic, perhaps we describe him as an Eastern mystic in there too.
But anyway, we watched Roadhouse, and it's just a marvel of a movie, marvel of a film if you've never seen it. First off, I don't know that I've ever seen the non-television version. I just saw like reruns of it on TV. Way different movie. Way different. There's like a ton of graphic sex, a ton of graphic violence. It's an R-rated movie,
awesome.
and it earned it, baby. It earned that.
Way to
R.
go, Swayze.
Yeah,
Way
a
to
lot
go.
of nudity. Swayze's nude in it. Everybody's naked in this movie. And so interesting. It also has one of the weirdest lines I've ever heard in a movie when the guy says that he used to have sex, but
have
he doesn't use that word.
unconsensual intercourse.
No, he doesn't say it's unconsensual. He doesn't say that. But he does say he used
Okay.
to have sex with guys in prison who look just like Patrick Swayze. And so
Have
it
you
gets
not
weird.
have you not seen Parks and Rec
Oh,
where
oh,
Andy
yeah.
is describing that?
Absolutely.
From context, this is not consensual.
Yes, exactly. From context, it is not. But you got to watch this movie. It is so weird. The dialogue is very weird. The whole story is weird. And set outside Kansas City, apparently. And so we'll see. But
I thought it was
check
outside
out Roadhouse.
Joplin.
I think it was filmed in Joplin, but it's in
I
a
thought
town
the-
called Jasper, which they describe as just outside Kansas City.
Oh, I thought they described it as just outside Joplin, but I could be wrong.
I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, that's all we have for you this week. This is the longest episode in Royals Weekly history. If you're new to the show, please stick around with us. Make sure you're subscribing to our Royals Weekly Substack, royalsweekly.substack.com. Thanks for joining us here on Royals Weekly, presented by Bet Online. We will see you again next week. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.